Good afternoon. It's Thursday, October 3rd, just after 12 o'clock, and we are continuing our conversations with the candidates for Newport City Council as well as Newport School Committee. All this week and next week, we are chatting with candidates. We had already done Ward 1 back ahead of the primary. You can find all of those interviews on whatsupnuke.com. We've been cranking out a couple of days. We have 5 today, and we have a couple more tonight, and a bunch next week. So if you're looking to learn more about any of the candidates, this is a great opportunity. We hope this is a great opportunity for you to learn about each of the candidates. We spend 30 minutes getting to know each one. You can watch them, listen to them, or read about them, all available on whatsupnuke.com. We are staying with the at-large council seats, and Councilor Mark Aramli joins me. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing great, Ryan.
And last week we were talking about some of the city business, but today we're here to talk about your campaign. Finishing your first term, tell me how your first term has been.
It's been great. You know, you always imagine how City Hall works from the outside, and then you get on the inside and you see how the sausage is actually made. I feel really good about my decision 2 years ago to run for City Council. I think there's a lot of work to be done. The city needs help. The city needs as much talent as it can get to, manage these long-term issues, these long-term challenges that we have. So I've both enjoyed myself. I've enjoyed meeting a lot of folks in the community that I would not normally cross paths with. And it has been a great joy to see some progress being made at City Hall. Government does not run at the speed of business, and I'm a business person, so I'm used to, let's get it done. But certainly we can see a lot of incremental forward movements on some very big topics that have given me some great satisfaction in being able to participate.
What has surprised you the most?
What surprises me the most? Newport as a city, and I say this not lightly, our finances are in terrible shape. In the simplest terms, Newport is broke. We get by, we pay our employees, we do the things that we need to do to exist as a city. But it was shocking to me when I came to understand the city budget that the reason we have a sustainable annual city budget is not because we have a city in financial balance. It's because we keep deferring these major things that the city needs to do. Major things like infrastructure, capital projects, water projects, you name it. It's the reason why we had to tear down buildings at the beach. And so I was very surprised at how out of balance fiscally the city is in terms of what it draws from revenue and where it draws that revenue and its obligations for all the things it needs to do. And I can put it in the most crystal clear terms. We are a city of 25,000 people and full-time residents. We have very unique expenses related to being on an island and being an oceanfront city. Those are geographic related. And that on its own is a lot for 25,000 people to pay for. You throw on top of that 4 to 5 million visitors a year and almost 100,000 people here during the day in the peak season. And you realize we have enormous costs, right, to run this city, to take care of both those unique geographic elements, seawalls, beaches, stormwater management, water on an island. And we have this massive river of tourists who we love, right? We have to appreciate that they come here. But someone's got to pay for all that. And the city finances today, 80% of what runs the city is just property tax. And of that massive flow of tourists who come through here, only 6.5% of the money that runs the city and pays for all this stuff is direct tourism taxes. So there's this structural imbalance that is inherent in the city. And we're really starting to see it now. What it's resulted in is all these deferrals. Ultimately, it's just this long-term decline in the city where, we're not keeping up with the cliff walk. We're not keeping up with the beach. We're not keeping up with stormwater flooding. And so that to me is one of the biggest surprises as I got into this process and got into city government. I was like, wow, we're in trouble. This is not a sustainable trend line, and we need to get a lot more money than we are getting from our tourist visitors to set the ship right. And that has been one of my number one priorities since I joined council. And it was actually one of the elements I ran on the first time around.
How do you think we got in such trouble? Is there a point? Is it just deferred maintenance? Is it not taking care of our infrastructure? How do we get to where we are today, and can we fix it?
Anything can be fixed. We didn't get here overnight. This is a decades-long issue, and there's no villain. There's no single, person or individual council that you can point to. The city gets amazing grades on promoting a tourist economy, right? When you grade the things that we're good at, A+. I mean, for decades, that has been the focus of city council, right? We need to grow tourism. We have a tourism economy. This is what feeds and nourishes, the engine of Newport. And we can never forget that. It is important. But along the way, as that tourism has just gone up and up and up and up and up, and for example, this past year, 2024, a record year for the hotels, record year for the restaurants, record year for the shops, a record year for congestion and just bodies, physical bodies in the city. Somewhere along the line, the long-term planning was missed that this is great for the economy, it's great for the businesses, but the city itself is not getting money. We are not getting the money flowing into the city to pay to do all that. And so, I would say we get a D- as a city on long-term planning. So we get the A+ on tourism, but really a poor job on long-term planning and long-term eyeballs on the fiscal sustainability of being a waterfront city and a destination city. And so that we're starting to really feel it now. And I think one of the things I'm most proud of being a first-term city councilor, this is not a problem that's going to get solved overnight, but now people are talking about it.
And speaking of talking about let's see, 2 weeks ago I had you on to talk about council business, or last week. Last week I had Evan Smith from Discover Newport on. He also brought up a tourism master plan. You brought up a tourism master plan when we talked last week. So I'm just connecting you two that you both want to talk about a tourism master plan. So go get it, because Evan says he wants to do it before he retires.
I think we need to get it done. And look, the city, one of the skills I have as a business person, and I manage a large business. This business was born in Newport. It was started on a kitchen table here. I started it and grew it with Newport local talent, brick by brick. We're now the largest consumer product company in the city of Newport. We're selling in 40 countries. We did all that with no debt. And we did all that with local talent. Long-term planning is inherent in running businesses like this. And it's one of the skills that I have that I really want to keep contributing to the city. And when you look at the long-term plans that we've come up with, Newport has a comprehensive land use plan. We now have a transportation master use plan, right? We now have a strategic plan that the city council, funded and put together. Tourism is such a big impact on everybody's day-to-day lives here. We have to have a master plan for it. We have to have, this long-term vision. Do we need more? Do we have enough? There are some residents who are beginning to feel that Newport has reached a tipping point, that the brand of Newport has gotten so strong. And I tip my hat off to Evan Smith at Discover Newport, by the way. Like, that's his job. His job is to bring people here. And he has been stellarly successful at doing that. Discover Newport, like we can say, we have been discovered. But having a master plan where we shift away from tourism at all costs. Grow tourism. That's what we need to do. And I'd say historically, that's been our city council for decades. I believe we're at a point where we need to be thinking about a balanced approach between growth of tourism and quality of life issues for the folks who live here year round. I've spoken to a lot of folks who said, man, I don't even stay in Newport on July 4th anymore. I leave, I get out of town. And on some of our peak holiday weekends, it's an hour to run a errand to CVS to get a prescription on a weekend. So, having that balanced approach and giving the residents a voice in what they want for the future of their city, because the concept of over tourism is real. Like, we have seen it. This is a national phenomenon. Cities like Barcelona and Venice, are revolting against it. And we don't want our city, we don't want Newport to get so far in that direction that the residents are actually just fed up. And so this tourism master plan, absolutely needed. And it cannot be run by our tourism boards. It needs to be run by the residents. It needs to have input from the residents and the locals, because at the end of the day, this balance between tourism and locals, I believe, is one of the most important issues for this city for the coming decade.
Speaking of most important issues, when you were considering, all candidates signed up in June to seek re-election, what went into your decision? You have a young family, you have a busy business. Why do you seek re-election? Why do you still want to take up 5 hours on a Wednesday night?
Well, for the record, my wife thinks I'm crazy. So she's a beautiful, intelligent, funny woman, and I'm lucky I met her. I've had folks say, Mark, you've got 3 young kids. I've got a 7-year-old and I've got 2 5-year-old girls, and I'm raising them in our community. I have a business that is I've been blessed that this business has really taken off and turned into a global phenomenon. Look, I get a lot of joy from giving back to the community. In community service, I've already achieved the success I need to achieve in business, and I think probably within a few years I won't be running this company anymore. But when BedJet sort of crossed the threshold into just a rocket ship, my wife and I got involved in philanthropy here on the island and really giving back. And it's one of the things I'm super proud of, with this company and the team of Newporters that helped build it. We have donated over $2 million, the company, BedJet, into the local community to help underprivileged families, with children with basic human needs stuff, food, shelter, mental health, educational needs. And that was my first sort of step into community service. And that was, 4 or 5 years ago. And what I found is I get a lot of joy out of it. I've been in this city 16 years now, and I started my business here. I met my wife here. I got married here. My kids were born here, and I'm going to get buried somewhere in this city. I'm here permanently. And being able to give back and contribute is just something I find brings me a lot of satisfaction and happiness in life. So yes, I've had some folks tell me I'm crazy, but sometimes you got to be crazy to get things done. And anything I can do to help the city of Newport, I'd like to do.
I'll tell you, I say it every other Wednesday when I'm sitting in front of my computer and I'm like, that's 5 hours. These people are crazy. I say it to all the candidates as well as everybody serving. I don't think you guys hear it enough, and girls, but thank you for serving. I don't think people understand. They might see the 5 hour meeting and be like, oh, wow, that's a long night. But the hours upon hours that go leading up, after, and all while trying to run a family, a business, your personal life. Yeah. So.
Look, it's a volunteer job at the end of the day. We're not getting paid. Correction, we get paid $2,000 for 2 years of our time. And, what I really want to do, if the voters will have me for a second term, is really just continue bringing this business mentality, this business judgment to City Hall. And you can't run a successful business unless you're willing to make brave decisions, and unless you're willing to realize, hey, we've studied something to death. We need to do something. And that really is, what I want the voters to know. If, they're evaluating me as a candidate for them, what do I represent, and what am I going to do, and what have I done? I'm a doer. I'm not a politician. I'm not somebody who's going to be perched on city council for the next decade. I'm there to do a job. And in my first 2 years on the job, I have proposed more impactful policy and ordinance-based improvements for the residents than any other sitting city councilor. So I've been there, I've been busy, been doing the work of the city. And I still, 2 years later, I have no lack of motivation. I'm still bubbling with energy for this, and I still have a fire in my belly to make this the best possible city that we can live in.
Mark, attending, I don't think I've missed a city council meeting or workshop, watching virtually, of course. But one of the things that I know that drives you nuts is when people say, well, this is the way we've done it, or this is the way we've always done it. Just wondering if you could provide a little background into into the way things have been done, the way that we do things, and the way you're thinking.
Look, I think it's crystal clear to everyone who lives here that whatever we've been doing for the last 20 years is not going to carry us into our next 20 years. The city infrastructure is in decline. We're in fiscal imbalance. I liken it in many ways, and I don't want to place blame on prior city councils. It's always easy to blame your predecessors for leaving you some issue that you've got to deal with. But the reality is, Newport is a complex, sophisticated, international city today, right? With a lot of unique infrastructure needs because of our island nature and our waterfront nature, and a lot of unique needs because of this massive river of tourism that we have. It's unprecedented compared to where it was. I remember when I moved here in 2008, right? January and February, it was like the plague came to town. I mean, it was like tumbleweeds. And you get a warm day in January and the town is full. And so we have changed as a city in the last 10 and 20 years. And so, the old way of doing things in many ways, as this really complex, sophisticated international city, we've been managed with the resource levels and sophistication of a town. And that's not going to carry Newport into the future, right? We are at a tipping point with a lot of issues where hard decisions have to be made about housing, about infrastructure, about money, about revenue. And one of the Kennedys had this really amazing quote, and I'm not going to get the words exactly right, but it was something along the line of, no matter how noble a cause you have, no matter how good for mankind what you are trying to do is, 10 to 20% of the people will come out against you, right? Yeah. And so Newport is one of those cities where we have a lot of tough decisions that have to be made to make sure this is a sustainable city for the residents. And those decisions are going to ruffle feathers. And I think prior city councils and even this city council that we have, there's folks who are just afraid of making the tough decisions. We saw it just last week with the short-term rentals, right? We had some folks just say, no, too polarizing. And so, yes, I represent a forward-thinking, willing to make brave and bold decisions for the city and not sit and study something for 5 or 10 years when we know it's an issue.
What, if reelected, what do you want to get done? What are those tough decisions? What do you want to bring forward? Your priorities? And that should fill out about 3 hours.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about what I did get done first. And some of the stuff, is check the box success, and some of it's still in progress. But, we look at first the finances, right? We need to get more money from the tourists. They're not paying their fair share. I love the tourists. We've got to embrace them, but they got to pay. 6.6% of what runs a city from tourists. It's not enough. We need to triple that. So we really need another 10 to 15 million in our annual budget out of direct tourism taxes. So one of the things I proposed and got passed in council was a doubling of the hotel tax that Newport gets. We actually get, of this 13% that tourists pay on their hotel bill to the state, we get 2.5% of that comes to us, 2.5%. You look at that 2.5%, you compare it to the 150 largest cities, right?
Yeah.
The share that they get, a national average is 6.5%. We're in the bottom sort of quartile of what cities get from their tourist economy from hotels. That's upside down. And so, I proposed doubling that, which would just sort of put us middle of the road. The city council agreed. We didn't get it from the legislature, and they're the ones who have to give it to us. We got to keep going back. We cannot relent on this. One of the things I proposed was a ticket tax, an admissions tax for high volume venues and events. We don't want to put taxes on the locals, right? This is a strategy of tax the tourists, not the locals. But if you are selling 60,000 tickets a year to an event, or 1 million tickets a year, for example, like the Preservation Society, that's not us, right? I mean, we're attending some of those events, but most of that stuff is out of towners. And so you can really surgically target tourism revenue there. Again, we went to the legislature, we didn't get it. We're going to just keep going back and convince them of what we need.
I have a quick question on those two items before we move forward. Do those have to go back in front of the new city council before they go back to?
Yes.
They do. Okay.
Yes. So the fact that this city council said, legislature, give it to us, it's a new body after November 5th, and we're going to have to discuss it all.
Yeah, start all over. Yep.
But I'll tell you what we did that was really, really smart, and this is the first city council to do this right, is we hired a state lobbyist. Okay. You got to, if you need money from the state, you got to be in the game, and that game includes having a lobbyist that is representing you, that is out there, working behind the scenes. And there's enormous amounts of money that the state has, and we should be trying to get as much of that back into Newport. So those lobbyists, look, this was our first season, this first legislative season with these folks. They've given us a roadmap on how to do this. And I think if we keep trying, and now we're starting to collaborate with other towns, other tourism towns, so collaborating with Block Island, collaborating with Middletown, getting Narragansett, getting this block of destination cities together, I believe we'll be successful.
Anything else that you wanted to highlight from the past 2 years before we look forward to what you want to?
Yeah. I mean, look, there's a lot of things I proposed and got done. So, quality of life, street noise, street safety. If you don't have a city government that is looking out for public safety and quality of life, you don't have a government. And that's been one of my big priorities. Excessively loud vehicles, open pipe motorcycles. I'm super proud. One of my initiatives resulted in some new technology being rolled out. We've got these sound cameras that are now being deployed. So we're short on the police department for enforcement on noise. These things are going to get parked. They're going to measure noise from vehicles. You're over the limit. You're going to get a $250 ticket. And those tickets just started flowing about 4 weeks ago. So that's we're one of the first cities in the country to roll that out. We are fixing the resident parking sticker program. Okay, a lot of renters and a lot of homeowners in the city, they depend on those resident parking stickers. And it's been getting really hard to find a spot. I took a deep dive into the program. I'm like, oh my God, the rules haven't been updated in 20 years. And there's so much abuse. You have people living in Portsmouth laughing about how they're getting a Newport resident parking sticker mailed to them every year. You have an Airbnb operator in the downtown who got 14 resident parking stickers, right? People are wondering why they can't find a spot. It's because the city hasn't managed the program well. So we're fixing that. And I know I'm looking at the clock. We're running out of time here.
Oh, that's all right. I just wanted to make note, and we can go a little extra here, but there is a workshop coming up on Monday for the resident parking.
Yes.
So I just wanted to make notice of that. It happens at Innovate Newport. Details on whatsupnoop.com if you're looking for it. I can't find it quickly.
I highly encourage residents to attend who have a vested interest in resident sticker parking. What we've done so far is come up with a lot of ideas to fix the current program to, number one, eliminate abuse. There's massive abuse. There's people who are getting these stickers that don't deserve them, that don't need them. Number two, enhanced enforcement. Okay. Right now, you know what a ticket costs if you park in a resident parking sticker zone without a sticker?
25, 35.
Nothing. It's nothing. Yeah, it's like $25. It's like, that's more than the cost of parking in downtown Newport. So addressing things like that to make it more painful for the violators who just roll in and say, hey, I'll pay the $25. That's a good deal.
We've been talking about a lot of issues that affect residents, and I just want to spend a couple minutes on it. Education in Newport. And
Yes.
so you have a couple young ones who are going to be heading that way, if they're not already in that way. You know, anything that city council can do, anything you're thinking in education?
Absolutely. I grew up in the public education system in Connecticut, which has one of the best public education systems in the country. And a long time ago, they decided we're going to have the highest paid teachers in the country, and everybody's got to have a master's degree, right? Boom, 5 years later, Connecticut's top of the list. You can make education better. In Newport, we've got unique challenges, but you know, over the last 2 years and in the coming term, if the voters bring me back, I have consistently voted in favor of Rogers High School and getting Rogers High School done. So unequivocally, we got to finish the school. The school has to have all the vocational programs. We can't finish half a school. Okay, we've got to have the technology programs, automotive programs. Those are important. We got to have a sport field. Okay, so again, these are all these scenarios where we sort of get 3/4 of a high school. The whole thing's got to get done. And I've been committed with my voting record on making sure Rogers crosses the threshold as a world-class facility, and I'm going to continue to vote that way moving forward.
Another thing that you have supported, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, is the upcoming bond, and that need voters supporting that.
Yeah. So look, it's easy to say, hey, we're wasting all this money. Why are we borrowing all this money? The city's infrastructure is a mess. I mean, you know, things like what happened at the beach, where suddenly we're having to tear down a building and we don't have a replacement. You're going to keep seeing that. You're going to keep seeing that spring up, where suddenly a seawall has failed, or the cliff walk, there's another section that's failed and we can't go on it, or a neighborhood starts flooding. There are so many major infrastructure projects that the city needs, not to be a shiny new Newport, okay, not to be this new sparkling brand new city, but just to maintain the livability of what we have. So this is not by any means a loose bit of cash that doesn't have to be spent. I highly urge the voters, it's the right thing to do. And I also want to reinforce, if we don't, going back to this tax the tourists, not the locals, if we don't get that tax money from the tourists, and it's there, I mean, there's rivers of money going through this city, and we just need to dip our cup in that tourist flow. At some point, the mother of all property tax increases is going to land on all of us, because somebody's got to pay for this stuff. I don't want that. The residents don't want that. And that's why, you know, finding the right sources of revenue that doesn't impact the locals is fundamental to the city priority.
What would be your
and for paying off that bond and making sure we don't need another bond in the future.
And for those who aren't familiar with the bonds, they can visit the City of Newport's website. It's right there on the front page. You can see all the different projects of how it would help or how it would work. One thing to keep in mind is the bottom number stays the same, 98.5 million. Everything else on there can be fluid. So if something comes under budget, it can be moved to another project. And of course, you don't have to spend it all. That's my quick bonds, my bond background. Mark, what's something that the next city council can do that would have the quickest or best or biggest impact on residents?
Look, everybody talks about housing as a priority. And we had an opportunity last week to make a material improvement in our housing situation. So for those who hadn't followed, you know, I had personally proposed the final ban on new short-term rentals in the city, new ones, not pre-existing ones, not folks who are renting a room in their house, but just the new ones for the last areas of the city that are left. We had the votes, and with sort of a procedural maneuver, a minority of council kiboshed that. That was a very singular decision, right? And when folks are looking at their priorities, it's very easy to distinguish between folks who are willing to make hard decisions for housing and folks that are still prioritizing tourism. It was a polarizing decision, but what we knew as a fact is that voting for it would save 20 plus housing units a year that are being gobbled up by Airbnbs. 20 a year. Might not sound like a lot, but that's 20 to 40 residents that are losing their homes and getting pushed out of town. So brave decisions on things like housing, that, you know, the next city council needs to make the brave decisions. Everything's fine, you know, nothing's wrong with the city. We get to, you know, just keep doing what we've been doing. It's not going to work. It's not going to solve the housing situation. So if I have any message for the next city council, please don't be afraid to make the bold and brave decisions. We haven't made them for decades. We need to start making them now, or it's going to be more of the same, and we will have, in 5 years, no renters left in the city. They'll all be gone.
I imagine the new council gets appointed in December, so I don't anticipate that you would bring back the short-term rental that was just defeated last week. But if reelected, would you bring it back to the next council?
I believe it's the right thing for the city. And I want to caveat that. I'm a business person. I believe in a free market economy. I do not believe in government interference in markets, but you have to understand with short-term rentals, it's like an invasive species. We have already seen what happens when renters, long-term renters, have to compete with the incredibly lucrative nature of an Airbnb in a town like this, right? They cannot compete. And so the owners, the landlords, they've been converting to Airbnb or they've been selling to Airbnb investors. There's a second chapter to that story, which is incredibly dangerous to this city. Moving on from housing, right? The next chapter of Airbnb, if we don't do something, the state of Rhode Island passed a law earlier this year called adaptive reuse, and that allows any commercial property, any property not used for residential, a church, an office, a restaurant, a shop, any commercial building by right can be converted into residential units. Now that on its surface sounds good, but then those residential units can be converted into Airbnbs. And so now we've had this scenario where the housing stock for renters and homeowners has been gobbled up and continues to be at risk in some sections of the city. But now the mom and pop shops on Thames Street and Broadway, they are now in competition with Airbnbs to have their buildings sold off by their landlords. And let me tell you, the free market economy, when something is this lucrative, it wins every time. And you know, there were some arguments from some dissenting counselors like, look, you know, Newport's a tourism town. This is tourism. Like, well, do we need more? Valid question. Last time we restricted something, it was the liquor licenses, right? We capped liquor licenses. And look how expensive liquor licenses are. I thank God somebody was smart enough, however many decades ago on city council, to cap liquor licenses, because that is, if we didn't, the entire city would be bars. Every single, you know, we'd have a bar in every corner and every shop would be a bar, because that's a lucrative you know, highest and best use return for a lot of properties in Newport. And so somebody was smart enough to say, hey, this is going to get out of control. And, you know, while I don't like interfering in free markets, I can see that left alone, the Airbnb phenomena has already devastated our housing stock, and it will begin to devastate these small mom and pop shops. And look, that's part of the charm of Newport. You know, do you want to go to Michael Hayes on Bellevue Avenue for a suit and a nice outfit, or do you want to go to Men's Warehouse, right? It's this local shop, you know, a charm of Newport that we need to protect. And so I do think that the discussion shouldn't be finalized on it, and perhaps there's different ways to do it. But this is one of those existential issues. And by the way, we're not the only city who experienced this. This isn't new. Santa Monica, which is like the West Coast version, bigger version of Newport, New Orleans, San Francisco, New York, they've all cut them out. We're not going to be the first. We're not making some, left field decision here. We're following the path that a lot of other cities that are ahead of us, destination cities, have realized. I mean, you got to control this, or it's you're not going to have a city left. You're going to be a tourist city that's all dark neighborhoods, and you're going to have your mom and pop shops gutted at some point as well.
Mark, as we wrap up, I'm just wondering if you could just remind people about why they should vote for you. Voting starts October 16th. Early voting starts October 16th, Wednesday, less than 2 weeks away. General election is November 5th. Why do you want people's vote?
A vote for me is a vote for not business as usual. I am not afraid to make the tough decisions, brave decisions, but capability and judgment. You want what is important for folks that lead a enterprise like us, like $150 million a year enterprise like the city of Newport. That's what it is. Capability and judgment and the ability to have very good long-term planning skills, very good financial skills. I'm a degreed engineer with an MBA in finance. I know money. I understand money. I understand where money should be generated from, when it's being spent well, when it's being wasted, and how to protect it. I understand what things should cost when it comes to capital assets and building things. And so, there's a unique background that I have that I think happens to be one of the areas where the city could use a lot of help. I do think we have a very diverse council. We have a nice mix of men and women. We have a nice mix of backgrounds. We have a nice mix of, some business people, some folks from, other areas, other careers that are not business related. And that mix is important. You don't want a council of like all business people, but I do believe my background as a successful, effective doer in business has translated very well into helping Newport cross this chasm of these huge challenges we have right now.
Mark, for more information, if people want to get in touch with you, markfornewport.com.
Thank you, Ryan. And thanks for running this series. I really think what you do is great here for the process. The more information the voters have, the more exposure they have to the candidates, the better the process runs. So thank you.
Yeah, I think it's important. I've said this many times that, sometimes at a forum or a written story, you don't get the personality and you don't get the passion and, a smile, or if people get a little upset about something, it shows a lot more. And hopefully it's helping people connect with.
Well, there's been a lot of, slinging of stuff during this election cycle. And, what I want everyone to know at the end of the day, everybody, no matter whose team you're on, no matter which counselor is your woman or guy, we're all volunteers. We're all trying our best.
Excellent. All right, Mark. Well, we wish you the very best of luck. We'll talk to you soon about city council business. I've looked at the upcoming agenda. I don't see anything that jumps out right away, but we'll talk soon. And you're always invited to join us to talk about city business.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right. I want to thank Mark Aramli for joining me. He is a current Newport City Councilor at large. He is seeking re-election at an at-large position, so you'll find him there on your upcoming ballot in the city of Newport. Missed any portion of this interview, want to watch it again, want to share it, want to compare and contrast candidates, all available on whatsupnoop.com. Sign up for our newsletter. You'll also get the audio, a full story, video, all of that good stuff. We have a lot of interviews lined up this week as well as next week. Visit whatsupnoop.com for the full schedule. Thanks for watching.